It started as a day full of excitement, optimism for many Mexican nationals as thousands lined up outside the Mexican consulate in Houston. They were ready to participate in the Mexican elections.
I feel that everybody really wants to vote for our country.
That spark for many quickly turned into anger, frustration as many waited in line for hours to vote. They said there was no organization. We followed the line that stretched around the building. You can see thousands of people that showed up to Houston. Here in Texas, there were just two locations where they could vote, Houston or Dallas. This man made the trip from Austin.
People who want to vote, they got it drove all the way to here.
Today was their chance to vote for a Mexican president and other political spots, but a historical election for many as they're likely to elect the first female president. Claudia Sheinbaum and Xochitl Galvez, the top runners.
Que sí, porque pues queremos el cambio, queremos tener el derecho al voto, ¿verdad?
This woman from San Antonio said she made the expense to come here to Houston to sit in line for over 8 hours because she wants change in Mexico. See, during these last years, violence, they say, has increased.
I feel that the people want to vote for Mexico, to have something better.
But even after a long line, thousands were turned away. See, inside there were only 8 electronic voting machines. A disappointment for those who stood in line for 9 hours and turned away.
I don't know. I'm gonna be upset all night, but hopefully Mexico is gonna change to the right way.
Chaos and confusion outside the Mexican consulate. Crowds gathering at the front gate with hopes of casting their ballot in Mexico's historic presidential elections.
I think she'll be better organized, and as a Mexicans, we deserve the right to have better elections and a better process.
2 separate queues wrapping around the building. Voters who did not pre-register online showed up overnight. Their frustration mounting after learning that only 1,500 ballots would be available to those who didn't register ahead of the election.
It's too little. I mean, only 1,500, that's nothing. I mean, at least should it be like 5,000, something like that? At least.
The consulate office serving as an in-person polling station for the thousands of Mexican nationals living in LA and voting abroad. Mexico introduced so-called extraterritorial voting in 2006. More than 32,000 Mexican citizens voted from other countries that year, according to a report from UC San Diego. This year, applications to vote from abroad have jumped to more than 250,000. Elizabeth Cruz says this is her first time voting in a Mexican presidential election because she believes change is needed, and she is hoping the next leader will be a woman.
The violence, there's a lot of violence, with the women, violence in general, not just women, but everything, cartels and all of that.
Mexican consulate officials tell us one of their biggest problems today isn't just the crowd of people that showed up to cast their ballots, but it's actually the electronic voting system here that will shut down at exactly 5:30 this afternoon.
It was a packed parking lot at the Mexican consulate in Phoenix on Sunday as hundreds of people lined up to vote for Mexico's presidential election.
I'm happy.
Gabriel Vielmas, a volunteer, tells us he was the first in line to vote.
Did you sleep here?
Yes, I'm sleeping here. I'm the first people who can vote.
Marissa Ramirez, visiting from Oaxaca, Mexico, lined up to cast her ballot.
It's time to vote.
After all, this year could be one of Mexico's biggest elections.
This is very important, I think, for all of us.
Mexicans are set to give the nation its first female president, a groundbreaking development in a country where women couldn't cast ballots for president until 1954.
Having a woman as a president, I think that's one of the best things that we can happen.
Frontrunners for the coveted spot, Claudia Sheinbaum from the current reigning political party, and Xochitl Galvez, who has gained traction.
We want to be part of this.
The Mexican consulate in Phoenix is one of 20 approved sites in the U.S., with 1,500 ballots available for Mexican citizens with a valid electoral ID who did not register to vote abroad by the February deadline.
For our number 1,029.
Something that's meaningful for people like Yvette Rasmussen, who's originally from Mexico City but now lives in Queen Creek.
It is nice to be able to see how many of our citizens even though we're here in the States, are still participating in elections.
Whoever's elected, what do you hope they do first?
We want to make sure that there's more opportunities for all the entrepreneurs.
Voters like Marcos Garcia Acosta from Chandler hope Mexico's next president tackles the most important issues at hand.
In Mexico, it is definitely going to be security.
Like reducing crime and creating more opportunity.
More opportunities for the English language.
We can with what we have.
Frustration at the polls. Mexican nationals from across the Midwest came out to Chicago's Mexican consulate to vote in person for the country's historic presidential race. The country is on track to elect its first female president. The candidates are Claudia Sheinbaum, former mayor of Mexico City, and Xochitl Gálvez, a senator and tech entrepreneur. The election drawing attention around the globe and here at home. Registered voters had the option to vote online or by mail, but many opted to vote in person. On Sunday, more than 1,000 Mexican nationals waited in line near the west side of the city. One voter telling us he's met people who made the trip from places like Iowa, Wisconsin, Ohio, and Indiana.
De lejos, de Iowa, de Wisconsin, de Indiana.
Voters telling us in Spanish they've been in line under the hot sun for hours with nowhere to go for a bathroom break.
Y aquí hace falta que hubieran instalado unos baños públicos.
Voters say they're upset. At one point, the line stopped moving.
¿Qué pasó aquí? Que hicieron un desorden.
Inside the consulate, election officials asking for patience, but voters hit their breaking point and criticized them for their organization. Eduardo Puga is with the National Electoral Institute of Mexico.
Que viene a votar se está tardando más del tiempo que teníamos nosotros programado.
He tells us in Spanish the slowdown was caused because voters were taking longer than organizers anticipated at the polls. There are also a limited number of voting booths.
Gracias a todos los mexicanos que están pues súper orgullosos y contentos de poder ejercer su derecho al voto.
He assures registered voters in line will be able to cast their ballots.